So we'll turn our attention now to Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, one of the foundational works of the modern West's understanding of the nature of romantic love. I'll be giving two lectures on A Midsummer Night's Dream. Today I'll emphasize some of the themes that you might say are the most optimistic about love. I'll also bring out on Wednesday some of the themes that, while they're not exactly pessimistic, see more impediments or challenges to the nature of love. What I'd like to start from is a general thought about the structure of the action in A Midsummer Night's Dream. A Midsummer Night's Dream has a rather typical comic structure in that the young lovers escape from the city and flee to the country. This is a kind of mythological theme in many, many stories about love. In Shakespeare criticism, this is often talked about as Shakespeare's green world. The way that the lovers need to leave the confines of civilization. Civilization here defined as Athens, but more particularly civilization defined by political control, the control exercised by Theseus, the king, and family control, parental control, here particularly paternal control. Aegeus has his own ideas about whom his daughter Hermia should marry. He prefers Demetrius, whereas Hermia prefers Lysander. Theseus, the king, is on the side, generally speaking, of control and of good order. And it's not surprising that in this respect, he takes the side of the father. In order to pursue their true love, Lysander and Hermia concoct the typical young lover's scheme of running away, of eloping and going to the forest, to a place where they won't be controlled by what appears to them the false structures of convention or of civilization. So this flight to the green world is a way of representing love as something in itself requiring a kind of freedom, perhaps even a kind of wildness. This is a theme that we've seen in any number of other works that we've already looked at. Thomas Mann, of course, works over this theme in his own specific way by thinking about von Aschenbach's flight not all the way to the tigers, but to somewhere exotic, to somewhere that's a jungle, in order to open himself to the experience of love. Plato's Phaedrus, you'll remember, was organized around the physical action of Socrates and Phaedrus leaving the city of Athens to go out into the countryside, where they experience the voices, the sounds of nature, the singing of the cicadas, the restfulness next to a babbling brook and under a tall plane tree. So the notion that there's an aspect of our romantic lives that can open up only when we achieve a kind of freedom from civilization, from convention, a freedom from the oppressive identities that being members of families can put upon us, or the demands of citizenship. Shakespeare's play, then, is operating within a very traditional green world understanding of the nature of love. But of course, Shakespeare never leaves any tradition undisturbed, and he complicates his green world. In particular, he complicates it by having it populated by two groups other than simply the young lovers. On the one hand, there are the rude mechanicals, the lower class characters, the people that Shakespeare, using the English of his own day, refers to as clowns. That doesn't mean people dressed up with fuzzy orange hair and makeup. Clowns are another way of referring to the rude mechanicals, to the lower classes. Now, for this group of rude mechanicals, the green world is not primarily the world they go to fall in love or to be freed from the constraints on their love in the way that Lysander and Hermia want to flee. Instead, they go off to the forest because they're going to be practicing a play they're going to put on for the wedding of Theseus and his wife Hippolyta. So, for this troupe of actors, the green world is a world of freedom, but that freedom is understood as a theatrical world, a world where they can go to put on new identities in a play. For them too, then, the green world is an escape from their everyday identities as craftsmen, as lower class people. But the escape is into the plane of new identities. It raises the question for us of whether the romantic escape that Lysander and Hermia tried to fulfill in the green world is itself a kind of theater. Is it something theatrical? Is there a bit of play acting about it? After all, Lysander famously says to Hermia early in the play that the course of true love never did run smooth. That is, Lysander tells Hermia, we are a love story. And every love story has its challenges to overcome, the impediments to love that make the final consummation of the love all the more sweet. So Lysander and Hermia don't think of themselves as, hey, let's go out to the forest and we can play at being in love. But the parallel plot of the clowns, of the rude mechanicals, makes us ask a question about whether the freedom to pursue a certain romantic plot in one's life is itself something like theater. If there is a kind of acting or playing that's necessary for the course of true love. Now, it's not necessary that this be thought of as faking. After all, playing isn't the same as faking, as being a fraud. It might be that true love requires us to tap into the energies of play without thinking of that play as something that's false. Can theater, can acting, can playing be the vehicle of romantic truth, rather an avoidance of a truth? After all, it may be we have to escape from our staid, everyday identities in whatever city happens to control us. It may be we have to escape that to enter in to the childlike playfulness of the green world, of the world of love. So we see an interesting parallel plot structure. The green world both as the world of theater and as the world of romantic love. A dual kind of freedom. Here again we see a way in which Shakespeare is working over some themes that we've seen in other texts and in some of the movies. I think particularly here, of course, of the Symposium. the way that the god Dionysus is the god both of theater and of intoxication. So that the characters in the symposium need to come to terms with a kind of transport or a kind of giving up of identity in order to take on an identity in the theater of love. Shakespeare adds one more group, though, to the green world. And this is the group, the fairies, of Oberon and Titania. So we've got the aristocrats who escape the city for the freedoms of love. We have the lower class, the working class, who escapes from the city for the freedoms of theater. But we've got the magical beings, the fairies, who live in the green world, who are, so to speak, the natural inhabitants of the green world. They live always and everywhere in that kind of freedom. And their love takes on a kind of theatricality, so that we will want to look at ways in which Oberon and Titania, in their lovers' quarrel, mirror back to us some of the aspects of the human loves. The famous love juice, the love potion that Robin Goodfellow, or Puck, the mischievous fairy, uses to distort but also to energize the love affairs of the two young couples, or the four young people who flee to the green world. That love juice, that magic, seems to make romantic love, romantic attraction, something extraordinarily valuable, something that can change in an instant. Suddenly our eyes see a person as romantically interesting who, for all of those semesters or days before, had only been a friend. That sudden transformation of vision is one of the key elements of this play, enacted most beautifully and most comically in the translation, the transfiguration of Bottom, but enacted throughout the play in the question of whether to see someone with the eyes of romance requires something magical and perhaps something theatrical. Could it be that the freedom to see someone as a beloved, as a lover, requires of us, or is at least encouraged in us, when we're willing to play the part of finding someone romantically interesting? Is it something that we have to be ready to practice upon, to open up to? Can our love and its freedom and the freedoms of theater be put together into the magic of falling in love? So Shakespeare's green world in A Midsummer Night's Dream tries to bring together three strands of romantic freedom: an escape from external authority, so that our romantic loves are seen as the truest expression of ourselves, undistorted by our social roles, whether in the family or in, let's say, adult civil society. But also a green world of freedom to play a part, to put on new identities, and to let those identities speak through us. And finally, a freedom that in this play is figured as a magical freedom, the freedom of the realm of fairy, a freedom to transform or transfigure our everyday lives into something wondrous and strange that usually we would not see. Let me move from these more general reflections on the place of the green world within this play to two particular passages that raise a specific question about the place of erotic love, of the sexual aspect of romantic love, within this achievable human freedom. When Lysander and Hermia have flown to the forest, this is in 2:2, so Act 1, Scene 2. Hermia is worn out with the adventure, and night's coming on. So now they're going to go to sleep, as Hermia would describe it. Lysander would say they're going to go to bed. So this is actually on page 29 of this edition, if you have it. This is near the beginning of Act 2, Scene 2, around line 35. So Lysander says to Hermia, "Fair love, you faint from wandering in the wood." He's looking out for her. "And to speak troth, I have forgot our way." It's what people used to say before they said, "Oh, I'm running out of gas in the car." "Will rest us, Hermia, if you think it good, and tarry for the comfort of the day." And Hermia responds, "Be it so, Lysander. Find you out a bed, for I upon this bank will rest my head." And Lysander now goes all poetic. He says, "One turf shall serve as pillow for us both." He keeps going back between 1 and 2. So all these images of unity. "One heart, one bed, two bosoms, and one troth." And Hermia, who, well, she's relatively young, is not relatively stupid, says, "Nay, good Lysander, for my sake, my dear, lie further off yet. Do not lie so near." So he's kind of snuggling up to her on the bank here with his love poetry. It sounds like he might have borrowed it from Aristophanes' speech about two becoming one. And she's politely declining whatever offer might be embedded in that particular language. And Lysander is shocked that she could think he had any lustful thoughts in mind. He says, "Oh, take the sense, sweet, of my innocence. Love takes the meaning in love's conference. I mean that my heart unto yours is knit, so that but one heart we can make of it. Two bosoms interchained with an oath, so then two bosoms and a single troth. Then by your side no bedroom me deny, for lying so, Hermia, I do not lie." And Hermia says, "Lysander riddles very prettily. Now much beshrew my manners and my pride if Hermia meant to say Lysander lied. But, gentle friend, for love and courtesy, lie further off in human modesty. Such separation as what may well be said becomes a virtuous bachelor and a maid. So far be distant. And good night, sweet friend. Thy love never alter till thy sweet life end." So, Lysander here uses a vocabulary of intimacy, of closeness. But to our ears as to Hermia, it clearly has a very strong sexual undertone. It's the language of an intimacy of intercourse, but of course intercourse can be either spiritual, friendly, or it can be physical and sexual. So Hermia is saying, yes, the green world allows a kind of freedom, but it's a freedom that if we allow it to become sexual and in that narrow sense erotic, will undermine something about our relationship, something in our friendship. Now, what's striking is that this very language that when Lysander says it to Hermia has a very strong sexual content, also appears again later in the play, this time in the mouth of Helena. This is in 3:2. So this is out in the forest after they're all together, and Helena thinks that they're making fun of her. You remember that she thinks that all three, that Lysander, Demetrius, and Hermia, are all in cahoots, and that they're all making fun of her, and that the two men are pretending to be in love with her rather than with Hermia. And this is at around line 193 or 194. So in 3:2, Helena says to Hermia, she's going to chastise Hermia for mistreating her so when they've always been such close friends. She says, "Injurious Hermia, most ungrateful maid, have you conspired, have you with these contrived to bait me with this foul derision? Is all the counsel that we two have shared, the sisters' vows, the hours that we have spent when we have chid the hasty-footed time for parting us, oh, is all forgot?" So Helena's referring back to a childhood intimacy that she and Hermia have shared. An intimacy before the disruptions, the dislocations of romantic love. What it was like when we treated each other with the straightforward and simple intimacy of childhood, of sisters. I'm reminded here of a movie some of you may have seen called Stand By Me, which is a movie about boys before they reach the age where they're focused on girls, and about the particular kind of intimacy they have out in an adventure in a wood. Hermia goes on then, and here the description is a language of childhood intimacy, but it's the same language that Lysander used with a strong sexual undertow. Helena says, "All school days friendship, childhood innocence, we, Hermia, like two artificial gods." Think of how striking that phrase is. There was a kind of self-sufficiency they shared before the erotic desire for men came between them and complicated their relationship. Like two artificial gods have our needles created both one flower. So they embroidered together. And this is going to be her image of how close they were. Both on one sampler, sitting on one cushion. Again, the repetition of the oneness out of two. Both warbling of one song, both in one key. As if our hands, our sides, voices and minds had been incorporate. That is, incorporated into one body, one corpus. Again, the image is almost straight out of Aristophanes' speech. "So we grew together," she goes on, "like to a double cherry, seeming parted, but yet a union in partition. Two lovely berries molded on one stem. So with two seeming bodies, but one heart." So Helena is using this language, this very corporal language, this bodily language, for the non-sexual intimacy that she sees as a standard of human relationships, a standard that she achieved with Hermia. One of the questions of the play is whether that kind of intimacy can be achieved with the complexities of erotic love. Is there some way for these couples to preserve, indeed to intensify, the intimacies of childhood friendship, and yet preserve the complexities of romantic love. You might say the promise, the optimism of the play is that marriage is what allows the integration of the freedoms and intimacies of the green world into the complexities and the demands of a civil world, of a world of families and of fellow citizens. So the movement of the plot, escape from false constraint to a world of romantic truth out in the forest, but then a return in marriage and reintegration. It's that offer that makes A Midsummer Night's Dream an especially optimistic play, at least about marriage as the fulfillment of romance. Next time, we'll focus on some of the more difficult themes in the play.